prep. Okay, Ridge Sampson. That video, love that video. Tell me about that.
I think that was, we were just out playing one day, and I'd flown back from California to Texas to start working with you guys on instrument rating. I had my private pilot, so it was sort of a level of freedom that was amazing to fly around the country. I've flown, up and down the California coast. I've flown up to Canada. I've flown down to San Diego. I've across to Arizona many times. And now, I don't want to be constrained by clouds anymore and have another level of freedom.
So we're working on instrument rating. But how long have you had the private license now?
I think
How long since that video, or when that video was taken, how long had you had your license?
Oh, probably, I think that was in the summer. So I'd probably had it 3 or 4 months at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Amazing. So you're my good buddy. You started as my client or our client, and we became great friends. And I was thinking about you before the interview, and Renaissance Man came to mind. And so I didn't know what that is, so I looked it up. And it fits you perfectly. The Renaissance Man is someone who is well-educated, Ridge, multi-talented, Ridge, skilled in a wide range of fields, definitely you. And then it goes on, this definition, curious and loves learning, definitely. Creative and artistic, very. Analytical and logical, yes, check. Skilled in both physical and intellectual pursuits, yes. Strives for self-improvement in many areas. So maybe you need a call sign that reflects that, but you're such an interesting person, and I love so many things about you. So this interview is a great way for our audience to learn more about one of our amazing friends and clients. And every client we have feels like they're part of extension of our family. And you're definitely one of those persons. So let's kind of go back in time and piece all together how you came to Vector Approach and your history. And let's start with how you found Vector Approach. That was an interesting process.
Yeah. So I had, not the first time, I bought a plane and then wanted to figure out how to fly it. And I was thinking this morning, when I first started windsurfing, I bought a windsurfer before I knew how to sail. And I'm like, I'll figure this thing out. So, and I know that if I don't do it that way, I won't do it. So it's a way that I force myself into something. So I had the plane, and I was flying in Arizona with a friend of mine at the Cirrus Center there, and things were going great. And then our base of operations was his second home in Arizona, and our base of operations was kind of destroyed overnight when his wife decided to renovate the house. So we thought, okay. So I thought, I'll go find another place to fly from. And I rang up one of my original founding partners of one of our companies, and he lived here in Texas and said he wasn't doing anything. He was kind of bored and would love to hang out. So I said, oh, okay, I'll move the plane over there and start flying. So I called Carol at Cirrus, and I asked him, hey, do you know anyone in Texas? And he referred me to the local rep, Matt, and Matt gave me 2 names. And he said, yeah, I've got this sort of younger guy, and I have this not older guy, but older
Yes,
guy.
or guy for sure.
We're the same age.
Yeah.
And he's got tons of experience and whatever. So I was really expecting that kind of older, grumpy pilot that you hear on the radio on the PA and the planes. And I rang you up and we talked, and I realized that you weren't that, and really excited about flying and technologically savvy and all of that. So I thought, oh, okay. I made no more calls. I thought this would be great. So as the universe would have it, you ended up living literally 5 blocks, I'd say, from my friend's house.
It's amazing.
And the hangar down the road, I was expecting to drive an hour
You could walk to
every
my
morning
house.
or something. Yeah, we could walk between the houses. And we found that after the fact. So that's how I came to find Vector Approach.
Amazing. And we're so blessed that happened that way. Tell us about your family of origin, because you're Canadian. You're a Canadian citizen and you have a green card.
Yep.
So tell us give us the history of Ridge,
So
far back as you want.
yeah. So I grew up in Montreal, and which was just an absolutely idyllic place to grow up, and
Why?
we're right next to the water. I lived in a town. Half my neighbors were the players in the Montreal Canadiens, which were legends. They won every Stanley Cup year after year my whole childhood. Kenny Dryden was down the street. Yvon Cormier, Guy Lafleur. The Molsons were 4 blocks away at this huge estate on the water. And, everything said, Paris, New York, London, Montreal, and on things. It was like one of these cities in the world, and you thought you were in one of the centers of the universe. It was great. And it was, we had water, and we had fields. We go ride motorcycles. We could disappear into forests, and it was just a really beautiful place to grow up and run around, and it was really fun. So that was the start, and along the way, I ended up at boarding schools in the United States for various reasons, and so I was,
What part of the country?
I was in the Midwest, so I was moving both sides of the border.
Where?
Missouri,
Okay.
St. Louis area, and then I was going back to Montreal. I was going back and forth, and then I ended up going to college in the States, and then also university in Montreal at McGill. So I've lived on both sides of the border a lot, and then I moved sort of more permanently to the United States in probably 30 years ago, and have now I think spent most of my life in the United States.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to your work life. So tell us about that, because you have I love your history of work and things you've done. Such a
Yeah, it was
diverse
yeah, it was sort of
career.
weird. So it started out, I've only had one job offer in my life, and that was from McKinsey and Company.
I'm envious of that statement.
And well, I think I got my first job at the very, very end of my career. Because I just always invented as a serial entrepreneur. I just would start companies and do stuff, and
Is that in your nature, or does someone mentor you into that?
I don't know how it happened. It just sort of, maybe I'm unemployable. I don't know. But the sort of the first one was McKinsey, and it was.
What's McKinsey?
It's a huge management consulting firm, and it was a place, when I was in university that I really wanted to work. And they have a very rigorous interview process, and I was going through that process, and these management consultants would have you in their office and throw you a piece of paper and a pencil and maybe a calculator and say, figure this out, or what would you do in this situation? And so I'd been through this process, and they said there were, I don't know, a couple hundred candidates, and that I was their number one choice. And just to preface this, I have always loved photography, and I'd spent along the summer, I'd met a guy shooting, and I was helping him. I was assisting him in the shoots and stuff like that. And they said, hey, you're our number one choice, and we're going to send you to Harvard. I'm like, how are you going to get me to Harvard?
Wow.
And here's the salary. And it was amazing. And then they said, but we're not sure you want it. And
Did you?
my mouth moved before my brain. And I just said, you're right. And I left. And, along in the process, I've been seeing these older guys, and they were behind big desks and overweight, and it just didn't look like fun. Like, it wasn't fun. And so
That was a critical moment at a young age. And but look at the
crazy.
decision that you made. You were so successful as an entrepreneur.
But at that time, I was not successful. Like, I was just had nothing.
Yeah, but had you worked for a large firm, who knows what your trajectory would have been. So it was gutsy to make that move, was what I'm saying.
Or crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
So that resulted.
taking a little risk
Yeah.
can pay off.
So that resulted in I went on and assisted this photographer, and that was hard work because I was waiting tables till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I was traveling. I was in Toronto. I was traveling across the city. I was sleeping on my mom's couch. Then I was across the city again at 8 o'clock in the morning, starting at 9, and I was on my feet all day with this guy, on my feet all night. My knees
Did
hurt.
he mentor you?
Yeah, he did, and he taught me tons.
Interesting.
And as time
You had no formal education in photography.
No,
That was your
I'd always taken college classes and stuff, but nothing super formal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew my way around a darkroom. I could shoot things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I remember probably my very, very first shoot with a model for her portfolio, and it was a disaster on the lighting. And he just walked by and watched and let me fail quite spectacularly.
Mm.
And I think it's the only time I've reshot a job in my entire life. But the learning I got from that was fantastic. The mistakes that I made in that were great. And so that was a really good learning moment. I appreciated that he did that.
How old were you at the time?
I was like,
Mid-20s?
not even, or I was 21.
Oh, yeah, really young. And how old was he?
He was like 25.
Oh, young.
Yeah, he was quite young too.
Okay.
And that guy was driven. He wanted to be, the next Arthur Elgort or one of these legendary guys. And that name will ring a bell to other photographers. Anyway, so that was great. And then I went on to build a career in Toronto and quite successfully there. And I think sort of,
You became very successful.
yeah, pretty good. Probably the top 20 guys of working photographers in that
And-
city.
Okay.
You know,
In the world, right?
no,
fashion
in
photography?
Toronto, I think
Okay.
I'd say.
Okay.
And then, I was starting to shoot covers. I was shooting. I remember I shot the cover of Wedding Bells magazine with a girl who was 14 years old.
Oh my gosh.
After a couple of hours in hair and makeup, she looked amazing.
Uh-huh.
I still love that cover.
Wow.
And I was shooting commercial jobs. I was shooting stuff for banks. I was shooting stuff for like the L Bean of Canada and stuff like that. And then it was really cool. I'd be driving across town, and I'd see a bus shelter, and I'm like, oh, those guys look familiar. And the next one, I'd be like, well, oh, that's my shot. Wait a minute, the ad agency's blowing up my stuff, and I'm not getting paid.
So you got paid by ad agencies basically.
Yeah, ad agencies and
That's how you
clothing
later got into
companies.
advertising.
Yeah,
That was a connection.
that was a connection. And then the ad agencies
Okay.
would start, they were struggling with the campaign or whatever, and then I'd
Okay.
start throwing out headlines or something to them, and
Yeah.
they liked that, and they're like, oh, this guy can actually write headlines too. So then I'd get more work.
Yeah. This is fascinating work. Tell me the personalities that you took photos of. Like, tell me the coolest shoot you ever did, or personality, or
Well, if I was to a claim maybe would be that I was one of the guys that started Shalom Harlow's career, and one of her very, very first shoots, I think she was 15 years old, and I took that film to the best agent in Toronto and said, she's amazing, and literally you could not take a bad shot of this girl.
wow.
And it was really interesting. I had shot hundreds of girls at that point, and she just stood out. Like, it was
Why?
amazing.
What about her?
The camera loved her. You just could not take a bad photograph of her. Every single frame was amazing. I just never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
I couldn't load the camera fast enough. I couldn't. I could stare at the ceiling and shoot. And they're all like amazing. She's just incredible. And so then I shot with her a bunch of times, and we did a few location things, and then I ended up hiring her for Holt Renfrew, which is a really sort of a high end clothing client that I had in Canada. And so the short stint of her career, from start to maybe, I think she was gone in 6 months. She went to New York.
Wow.
And then she took off like a rocket to the moon, and she's still working today. She's
Today?
she's still working, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And she has shot with every one of my hero photographers in the world, and
Amazing.
I wish I was with her for all of those, because
Yeah.
these are my heroes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was great.
Wow. Okay. Other personalities?
Well, that. So I also remember there's a girl in Canada named Monica Schneider. She was way back in the day. She was one of the supermodel or just under supermodel level in Canada. She was great, and she was really sweet. And one of the local sort of MTV of Canada called Much Music was doing a day in the life of Monica, and they came in with the whole camera crew, and we shot, and I shot her on this really cool sort of. There's a cool Polaroid film that you can process instantly, like 35 mil. And it's sort of a black and white, shiny film. It looks great. And so I actually really loved the images we shot. And then it became a spot on TV or whatever, a segment.
Oh, wow.
It was kind of fun. So, yeah, so she was great. And then I think I told you earlier, a friend of mine was shooting Jay Leno, George Burns, and no, what's her name? She was Murphy Brown on TV. I forget her name. Anyway, so we had a day spent with those guys, and Jay Leno is a legitimately funny guy.
Really?
He was just great, and George Burns too. I think he's like 100 years old at the time, and just a character.
Yeah.
And the thing that surprised me was I also have her name. The Murphy Brown woman, who's an actress, had been a model, and she was the hardest.
Really?
And in my career, I used to shoot a lot of models for their portfolio, and I would shoot a lot of actors' headshots for their portfolio, or for their their headshot, whatever it was. And they were the hardest. Actors cannot just do a still shot. They always feel like they have to be in motion, and they're actually way harder to shoot than a model. And I think that this Murphy Brown person had shifted from a model to an actor and couldn't go back.
Oh, wow.
It was just I just noticed that. It was kind of a weird thing.
And what was the purpose of the shoot with Jay Leno and George Burns?
It was my buddy had a client. It's called Mackenzie or something. It's a huge financial organization in Canada, and they had these celebrities come in to talk for their event or whatever it was. And so we shot them.
Very cool. That's just amazing.
I mean,
I'm sure you have many other stories.
I did a lot of weird stuff. A buddy of mine was running the New York Times for Canada, and he would have me come and shoot events just as a side gig when I was really starting out. I think he was being nice and throwing me some things to do. And Canada's a huge country geographically, but the number of people that influence the entire country or run the whole country, or you can stick them in one room. And these events would be filled with everything short of the prime minister. I mean, the number two, the finance minister, everything like that. And then the owners of you name it company in that country they were all there in the room. So I used to hang out with all these guys, and it was really cool to meet a lot of them.
That's amazing. And you're doing photography.
Doing photography at the same time. And then, one of them used to take me to lunch all the time, and it'd be the senators at the table. And, one day I said, I'm thinking about changing careers. He goes, okay, I want you to shoot this event. Bring your camera. And then you're sitting at my table. So I think it was a $50,000 table. The speaker was the finance minister of Canada, which was like the vice president level. The table was loaded with the president of Bank of Montreal, president of this, president of that, whatever. He rings me up after and says, how'd you like your interview? Which one do you like? Like, holy cow. Yeah, he was
incredible.
Nuts. Yeah.
Incredible. And so from photography, you got into advertising. How did that transition happen? So what caused you to leave photography?
So, a couple things. One is I was shooting a lot of stuff for clients. And as I said earlier, sort of like I was starting to write stuff for them and write headlines for ads and things like that. I'm pretty good at 5 lines or 5 words. After that, I get lost. And so then one of my clients said, "Hey, we'd always loved all the advertising in San Francisco." And I moved to LA to shoot I liked the weather and I thought, oh, I'll go to LA. And that was a great location spot. I really should have gone to New York.
Mm.
And so that was a sort of a bad move. But I ended up in LA and I was shooting and I was working on movies and TV spots and things like that. And my client calls me and said, listen, let's go to San Francisco and open an ad agency. And I said, I'll call you back in a week. And I did. And I said, okay, let's go for it.
Mm.
And we did. We landed in San Francisco hours apart at the airport, and we ended up sleeping on couches and things like that. And we literally opened a design ad agency from zero, which is probably one of the dumbest things in the world you could possibly do.
Or
Because that is one of the toughest markets in the world. The talent there is staggeringly good,
Wow.
especially at that time. All the great advertising, the Got Milk campaign, all these things are coming out of San Francisco. It's great. And we just love the advertising. We love the work. So, I sort of shifted from loving photography and also loving the actual advertising product of marrying the headline with the ad and all that sort of stuff.
Interesting.
So that's what we did.
Wow, that's amazing.
And at that point in my career, I didn't get out of bed for under $5,000.
Mm.
Like that was just my day rate and then models and
Right.
all of that stuff. So for those times, that was good money. I was making, I was doing $20,000 jobs and it was great. And so I thought, oh, let's go to LA and do that. And I get to LA and I'm going for certain things and they were offering me like $1,400 and stuff. And I was like, that was like that was years ago.
Mm.
And they said, yeah, there's 10 guys that will do it behind you. That's our rate. Good luck. So if I'd gone to New York, I could have picked up a big agent and then that's where the work is. LA is a different animal and fun in the sun. So then I started transitioning to.
But you didn't think about returning to Toronto?
Yeah, I could have. I thought about it a bit, and I started transitioning to film, and at way back then, I had visions of being a director at some point.
Oh, really?
And
that's
so,
interesting.
and that was probably part of my direction to LA, and I thought,
Ah.
get in the movie business and I'll start doing that. And then, as we discussed, we made that move up to San Francisco. And, we opened this design ad agency up there and then things started to sort of take off and that agency became pretty successful.
Did you start the advertising agency on your own or did
I
you?
was with my business partner from Toronto. He's the guy that called me and said, hey, let's go to open an agency, which is,
Gotcha. Okay.
back to my ignorance is bliss
Yeah.
theme of that was a crazy thing to do.
How old were you at the time?
I was probably 25, 26. Mid to late 20s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe older.
And your business partner?
Because I'd already had sort of 5 years in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And
Your business partner was how old?
he was 20 years my senior. He took all of his life savings and we moved there with 2 of his kids and literally started from nothing. And that was pretty terrifying
Really?
to have 0 clients.
With the ad agency?
Yeah. And, I'm not a sales guy or whatever. And I literally put 100-foot extension on the phone cable because I knew how to do phone work for whatever reason. I can fix your phones at home anytime. I have my own toner kit, everything. Anyway, our office, actually it was a cool little office. It was in San Francisco, small. It was on one of the oldest streets in San Francisco, had the most murders in San Francisco from back in the Shanghai days. And our downstairs neighbor was doing some renovation and they found an entrance into one of the tunnels in San Francisco and all these old bottles from the 1880s.
Oh my
It had
gosh.
been a brothel back in the day. And the back of it had a couple of apartments. And at probably a year or two later, I ended up living in one of the apartments. And the owner of the building said to me, it's such a great creative apartment because Wim Wenders and Sam Shepard wrote the movie Paris, Texas in that apartment.
Really?
Yeah, it's like San Francisco is amazing. It's all this history. Anyway, so I got this huge long cable on the phone. I'd take literally a pot of coffee and go in the backyard and sit at a picnic table and cold call, dial for dollars, trying to get clients from 0.
No kidding.
That was really awful.
Did it work?
It worked,
Wow.
but that was hard.
Yeah.
And then we got, we did a lot of free work for homelessness in San Francisco and different things like that. And we started we're trying to make a name for ourselves, and we started winning a lot of awards, and we got on the radar of clients, and that's kind of how we built our business.
Amazing. And you knew something about advertising from the photography.
Yeah, from
'Cause
the
you
photographer, I was working with
you
ad
worked with
agencies,
them.
and there's
Mhm.
a publication called Communication Arts where they publish all the great ads, all the advertiser winners, and
Mhm.
great photography, everything. And we were
Mhm.
just obsessed
Mhm.
with Communication Arts. As CA would come out, we'd
Mhm.
just be all over it.
Wow. And the creativity from photography, does that transition over to advertising, or is that a different skill?
Um, it does, like, aesthetically, because you understand whether it's an illustration or photography, and you're marrying
Mhm.
that with some sort of a message of some sort
Mhm.
for product. And so you've got headlines, you've got copy, different things
Mhm.
like that. So I think for me, it was a relatively easy transition.
Mhm.
And then we started working with clients, and yeah, that was pretty good. And then that transition into the .com era came.
Yeah, so stand by just a second. So I'm trying to figure out where all these skills came that you have now. That, at your age at this point, um, you were a freelancer as a photographer, and then you started this advertising agency from zero, and it's you and your partner. But at some point, you had how many employees?
Zero.
No, no, at the end with
Oh, at the
advertising.
end, well, with the
By the time you sold it,
the agency
50
probably ended
something.
up 35, 40.
Yeah, so and you became the CEO.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And that was hard, by the way.
yeah.
So what was hard about that, I remember we got our first employee. We found this girl in a bar, and we got her to be our receptionist.
Oh my gosh.
And that was our first employee. And it was incredibly hard for me to ask anyone to do anything. That was really difficult. And then we went from one, and eventually two, three, four, five, and then you would have 8 and 10 people. And
And what positions were these for in the beginning?
they were sort of, maybe designers, writers, start building work, and project managers. We had one guy as account guy who was awful, and trying to manage clients. So I didn't have a playbook. We were making this up on the fly.
Mhm.
And how do we run an agency? I don't know. And they were all different. All agencies are mostly different. Now they all kind of look the same, but back then they were all very different, and they ran differently. So, but now that I think back on it, that was one of the hardest things for me, was to ask someone to do something that I knew how to do, and to ask someone else to do it was hard.
Mm.
And then as time goes on, so if you jump, years later,
Mhm.
and I now, I have a lot of CEOs, or some CEOs, that I help and sort of coach, and they're younger and coming along.
Mhm.
And I liken it to sort of a chessboard. And so you have, there's a certain point in time where you have the CEO, the queen, and you need to roll them out to have a hard conversation with the client, or get this thing done, or whatever. Your pawns on the board can't do it. So I would kind of say, okay, guys, just see me as a chess piece, and utilize me where you need me. And we kind of utilize different people in different positions. You might have a knight who's great at doing CTO, that's great at doing these things. Okay, bring out the knight when we need him. We'll have our sort of flanking, our frontline pawns doing as much as they can until we need to bring out the knight, or bring out this person. And we try and save those resources and use them strategically. So when you get sort of everyone thinking that way, it's not that I can't do the pawn's job. I can do it all day, and I'm happy to do it all day. But when you want me to do something sort of bigger, wheel me out and point me in a direction.
So how did you acquire all your leadership skills? Was it all on the job? Did you have a mentor at this time as the advertising agency grew? Or is this just
So
something that you just picked up
yeah, it was on the job,
doing
and
it?
then I got to a point, and I met this guy who had been CIO of Odwalla. I think I was out playing pool one night. CIO of Odwalla, and COO of CIO of Colgate, Odwalla, and Kransco, some of these really big companies, and he was kind of running it. And I said to him one day, I said, Michael, can I come and watch you? Like, I don't know how you run these companies.
How far along were you in the business this time at the advertising agency?
The agency was we probably had 20 people,
Okay. How many years have you been doing this
probably
work?
4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And I went down, and he said, I don't run a company of 200 people. I run a company of 2,000 people. And so I went down and he was running a company that was headquartered in Europe. And so he had all these people dialed in, and his assistant gave me a whole kind of portfolio of what was going on in the meeting. And I sat in there the whole time. And then we debriefed afterwards. I was like, oh, you're hard on this guy, and what was going on with that? And I was like, Michael, it's just amazing. I can't believe you run this company, And he just kind of looked at me and said, you can already, because we'd been working together for a while, he goes, you can already do this. You just don't know it.
Mm.
And that was an interesting moment. And in my entire career and everything that you do, I don't believe that you can do anything until the moment that you can visualize yourself doing it.
What did you do that when you were working on your private pilot license?
Exactly. So I'll go back to even photography, the first photo shoot that I, kind of messed up, but until I couldn't shoot and I couldn't do that, I was scared of it or whatever, until I could actually visualize myself doing it. I couldn't be a CEO until you can actually visualize yourself doing it. And you couldn't be a pilot until you can visualize yourself doing it. So,
Very
and now
profound.
the next, challenge is the IFR thing, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on in that cockpit, and that Garmin system is incredible.
So, finish those last years at the advertising agency to the point that you sold it.
So the agency kept growing. And at one point, we sort of diverged, and we split from doing all traditional advertising to doing electronic advertising. And we had a meeting, and the partners we split up. And I said, okay, I'll do the online stuff, because I had already had Netscape as a client. I had AOL as a client. I think I had Autodesk as a client at that point. And I moved down the road. I had no cash. A friend of mine loaned me $20,000 to get through payroll. And we grew that business. And then that became, we had clients like American Express and Campbell Soup and Teradata and Medtronic. And we started getting some big names, Adobe and guys like that. And that grew to about 35 people. And then while that was going on, I started the software as a service company, which was a company to manage appointments and scheduling and things like that for people in the audiology business, which is hearing, and scheduling their patients and things like that. And
How did that happen?
So one of my advertising clients kind of came to me, my friend who I'm staying with, and said, hey, I think we can do direct marketing. There's a lot of direct marketing to hearing patients. And, we can automate it. We can upload these lists to the system, and it'll automatically go into the mail stream. And I said, we had been working on another project to build a system to manage the projects for the ad agency. I said, I think I can take that and glue it to this, because if we're going to do that, we need to automate it. We need to put on a calendar, and they get their 5-year, their 3-year, their 1 year, their 6-month, and we can automate all of this mail. And then that system grew into managing how you program a hearing aid, and managing an integration with QuickBooks, and managing all this stuff. And it became the hub for these guys' business.
But you moved from advertising to software. This is a whole different industry.
Yeah, I can't
And you
program
didn't
my
have
way
some-
of a paper bag,
so
right?
How did you manage all that?
So my CTO at the time, we would meet at a coffee shop every morning, and I would draw out the...
Oh, you had a CTO.
Yeah.
So he had the skills.
And he had the skills to program.
it.
I'd draw this out.
Interesting.
He'd program it overnight. Within 3 or 4 months, we had an alpha, and we put it out in the wild.
No way.
And people started running their businesses off it. And it just grew and grew and grew. And then we became the largest. I think we had a 75-80% market share in the United States at one point.
No kidding.
Costco still runs their system on ours.
Wow.
Companies in Europe with 1,000 locations are all running on our system. There's tens of millions of patients in there. And it went from server under Sean's desk to suddenly we're at IBM, and I think at one point we had 66 servers. And then ultimately we moved into the cloud, probably with AWS or something. And it's been just an incredible journey. Some days I wonder, how did I get here? Or often.
It's amazing. I've always wondered, I'm fresh with starting a business as an entrepreneur and running one. I was an airline pilot for my whole career. And so I sometimes wonder how you handle as a leader moments of duress. So flying an airliner around, most of the time things are good. And then you have brief moments of stress,
Yes.
if you will.
Yes.
I was going to use a cliche, but I won't. So can you think of moments as a business leader where you had a lot of stress on you in a short period of time that you had to solve something? And is that something now you can carry to the flying, now that you've seen what it's like to fly and how you manage obstacles when you're flying? Is there a carryover there?
Yeah. So the thing that I was told, but I didn't realize, by the way, yeah, I want to answer another question.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier you said, did I learn all this stuff? That gentleman I was talking about, he taught me so much stuff.
Photography or
No,
the CTO?
the CTO,
Mm-hmm.
the fellow running the company that said, "Oh, you can
right.
do this," the
Mm-hmm.
visualization thing, and he taught me so much stuff that was so valuable to me. I still draw on it today, and I share that with everyone I can. So I love meeting new people that are starting companies, and then I talk to, and I'm sharing a lot of information I learned from him and stuff that I picked up. So in moments of duress, so what I've been told is, it's people are watching you, and so as the leader, you kind of have to keep your cool.
That's right.
Big time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't bring the home to the office ever, and you have to be consistent and all of that sort of stuff. And so, and it's funny, I remember traveling with my son a few years ago, and we got into some really tough situations, and I knew he was watching, and I wanted to keep
In the airplane?
no, not in the airplane,
Oh.
just traveling some other stuff, but
Okay.
keep a steady, not panicked
That's good.
image for him. And so in the company side of things, so a moment of duress that I do recall quite well, my CFO at the time rolled in one day and said, "Hey, we haven't billed anyone for 3 months." Oh. So we've got 8,000, 10,000 clients that get dinged on their credit cards every month. And they had been transitioning the system. And one of the guy that was running it said,
Is this SaaS or advertising?
This is a SaaS company.
Okay.
He said, "We have to burn the boats and just go to the new system." And she says, "We haven't billed anyone for 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
And we don't have any money. And we need $500,000.
That's duress.
It's sort of duress.
Yeah.
Fortunately at that point in time, I could come up with $500,000 overnight.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like,
Yeah.
I looked at her, are you kidding me? This
And
is
you
the kind of
solved it
thing
quickly.
you should have been on the table with your hair on fire. And, she said it to me in the same tone you'd say, "Oh, it's sunny outside," or whatever. I couldn't believe my ears. But there have been many moments like that where, you got to stay cool and not flip out under pressure, which is what the plane is all about.
Right. Yeah, and we've talked about in your instrument training, don't be in a hurry, right?
Slow down.
Slow down when things are, then something happens, some abnormal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've had our systems go down, and people are losing their mind because we ran a mission critical software for these companies. When 8,000 people can't use it,
Yeah.
it's amazing how quick your phone rings.
Yeah. I can imagine.
So, we'd be on the phone. At the time we were with IBM, we'd be on the phone. We'd get everyone on there and like, nobody's leaving until this, we're back up. Things like that.
Wow.
So,
All right. So of your career from photography to advertising to the SaaS business, if you had to pick one instead of doing all three, which one would you choose?
and we discussed this. I think I'd have to say the photography because it was a passion and I loved it. Yeah. And I was being successful. I was making really good money at it. I could have had an amazing career at that forever.
What would the evolution have been? Because you were a freelancer. Would it be?
I would have shot bigger stuff, more covers, bigger clients. I probably would have gone to New York. Or I think my dream was to really transition to a film director.
Is that a normal progression from photography to film director?
I don't think so. I think a lot of still guys stay in the film. And I remember getting to a set one day and there were like 100 people to shoot this TV commercial. And I thought we were filming a major film. I'm like, why are there so many people here? And I was looking at the shot. I'm like, I could have shot this with 4 or 5 people. Who are all these extras? Do your own lighting. Let's go.
Right.
So but the photography, I think, was great in that I really loved it, and I could keep learning and keep getting better at it.
Yeah.
You know, you could keep trying new things, and I love shooting in Toronto because all of the top, we all knew each other, all the guys that were shooting regularly, and we could see each other's work, and girls' portfolios are coming in all the time, and I could literally pick out the other guy's work just from the image.
Very
And we
cool.
could all do that, and then we'd see, oh yeah, Chris did this really cool thing. Oh, I could take that and notch it up over here, and so it was the level we were getting to quickly. I mean, these were world-class photographers, and still today, I see a lot of these guys that I worked with for years ago, and they're shooting great stuff and innovating all the time. One of them she was great, and she ended up shooting a video with David Bowie, another one of my heroes.
Wow. Amazing.
So I kind of miss that. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like I could have been in that creative boat.
But you wouldn't have been a business leader. You would have
No.
been, it had to be Ridge doing the photography.
Yeah,
There's only one Ridge, so you're not leveraging yourself.
Exactly. It's not a leverage. So
Yeah.
I was trying to build a business where you could, keep it running while you're sleeping.
Right.
It's sort of a trade-off.
Right.
I became a coach or a CEO of people versus an individual producer or contributor. And which is interesting because I saw Tom Peters speak one day in San Francisco. That was a great day. And he wrote a book back in the 80s. It's like, the name's escaping me right now, but if you look up Tom Peters, you'll see it. And every business student in the world was reading it. And so he was talking about individual contributors, and we create a product. So if you look on a continuum, an author or a photographer creates an image, and it might last for 100, 200 years. A painter creates something that lasts for 1,000 years. A chef might create a dinner that lasts for a couple of hours. Like that is their art, their piece of work, right? Their creation. And a writer might write something that lasts forever.
Amazing.
So we're on that continuum. And then
Yeah.
one of my employees created websites, and I'm like, these are just little, pixels that are going to disappear. Does that not make you sad? And she's like, no, I like the process.
Yeah.
And so as a CEO or a leader, airplanes, I go, okay, what is my product? And it's really coaching these people and helping people become as good as they can be at whatever they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's producing spots or shooting or writing or whatever it is.
Right.
And that became fun. But I do miss shooting and having an image and printing it and just really enjoying it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So before we I want to run into your hobbies, and then we'll get into flying. But can you share with us what you would say to someone today who wanted to start a business? They want to be running a business one day. Let's say they're a young person. They're asking you for guidance on what they need to do to be successful. What would you say to that person?
I would say don't do it for the money. I run into a lot of people who go, oh, I want to make, I don't want to have a job. I want to make all this money. I'd say 90% of the time that is a recipe for disaster.
Why?
I think the motivation is wrong. I think when you start a business to solve a problem, when you see a problem in the industry, a niche or something like that, like when we built our software company, we saw a problem in the industry. These guys were all running their businesses on standalone computers, and they wanted to run ad campaigns and to be able to book the appointments on these schedules all over the place. And so we gave them a tool that they could remotely book appointments in real time. So that's kind of the hole that we saw there. I think that if you want to go to aviation, I think our good friend at Virgin, he did Virgin Records, and then if I have the story right, he was traveling somewhere and got stranded and rallied the people in the waiting room, and they chartered a plane to get out of there. So he saw this problem of this is way too expensive. The plane was way cheaper. I can build an airline for a lot less. And he's a wonderful leader. And he's if you look at every one of his companies, they've usually filled a hole in the industry.
Interesting.
So I think if you start from there, you'll be successful.
Any other thoughts about leadership skills? I know you have a lot of them.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about a bunch of things.
Yeah. Like I
What comes
was
to mind?
look at them. Well, sometimes people are, I think one of the biggest things is always ask why. In that I've seen many times someone goes, oh, so-and-so did this thing and it's really crazy. And I said, well, they didn't get up in the morning to screw up the company or do something. Ask them why first before. And you ask them why, and there's a perfectly logical reason why. So I think in any situation, and especially in a confrontational situation, I always try and just say, can you just explain to me why
That's good.
first? And that usually just diffuses everything, and you understand the other side. It's really valuable.
Conflict resolution.
It's really valuable.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's talk about your hobbies. We know you love flying right now, but you had hobbies before flying, because flying's pretty recent. I mean, we discussed, I think it's been 5 years since you
Yeah.
started flying, right? So what were your hobbies prior to flying?
And yeah, so that goes back to my unintended consequence of,
Okay.
I ran into someone and just started doing this. But before flying, so I mountain bike a lot still, snowboard a lot still. I'm in Whistler all the time, which is the best place in the world for snowboarding and mountain biking that I can think of. And I spent a lot of years windsurfing. And as you know, I transfer a lot of those wind skills and thoughts about windsurfing to the plane. There's a lot of transfer there. So I try and draw, and even the other day I had an analogy from the camera, understanding, apertures and shutter speeds and how it translates to the plane. It's weird, but it works. So I try and draw on all that previous experience and hobbies and whatever it is. So I'd say the big hobbies are probably the mountain biking, windsurfing.
Give us an example of the windsurfing carryover.
Well, today as we were flying over here, I was saying that when you kind of the plane flies along, say it's 60%, and I'll call it boat speed. And if you're a boat, you're up on the water and you're planing. And when you go a bit slower than that, you lose that attitude and you start to slog through the water. You slog through the air. So your plane's trying to keep you in the air, but it's not really on plane. It's not like zipping over the top of the water.
Yeah.
So that would be my big analogy. And that's energy state.
Right.
And which we talked a lot about yesterday. And
Angle attack.
really, so that really helps me to understand the energy state I'm in. Am I slogging? Am I on plane? Or am I really ripping on plane? And how do we slow that down?
All right. So tell us about how you got into flying. What was the discovery moment there? Because you weren't looking for flying. Flying found you.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for flying at all. I was looking for lunch.
Okay. Explain.
So I was invited to lunch at the Napa airport. A couple of my friends were flying from Southern California up to Nevada they have a business in Nevada, and I hadn't seen them in a while. We're college friends, and they said, "Hey, do you want to come and have lunch?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So I canceled a few appointments and I went to lunch, and I was there, and they had their aircraft. They had a King Air, and there was another plane there, which was a Vision Jet, and so, I was just there for lunch, and after lunch they said, "Hey, you want to go flying?" And we're walking out to the plane, and the pilot goes, "Okay, just get in the left seat." And I didn't know left from right. I had no idea what was going on. So I'm in the plane, I'm in the front seat. I'm like, this is cool. I'd never really been in a private plane before, or a small aircraft, maybe once or twice in a prop. And we're taxiing out, and he looks over at me and says, "You're going to take off."
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, "I'm going to what?" So he walks me through the takeoff.
Who's the pilot?
He was a guy flying around doing the sort of 20-hour check with a new Vision Jet pilot.
So he's just randomly there?
Yeah, he was part of the group. The two planes were flying up, and the guy flying that plane had this guy with him. I'm not sure if he was a Cirrus person or one of the Cirrus guys, but he clearly knew the aircraft. I think he'd been an ex-fighter pilot. He happened to be Canadian as well.
Oh, interesting.
So out of Calgary. And so, all right. So he kind of walked me through it, and I'm sure he had his hand on the other stick. And so we took off, and we flew out over the Golden Gate Bridge. We flew over my house, and we were flying around, and I was like, this is fantastic. And then we flew back towards the Napa airport, and he said, "Okay, fly out towards that bridge, turn right." I'm like, "Okay," and then he said, "And you're gonna land." And I'm like,
I'm gonna what?
"I'm gonna what?" So he basically walked me through it. Again, I'm sure he had his hand on it, but
Let's qualify this though. The Vision Jet is easy to land.
yes, it's much easier to land. I mean,
It's a
just
glider.
It's a
just
glider.
So docile.
It's really smooth.
Uh-huh.
It's super easy to land.
Uh-huh.
It just glides through the air.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think for me, I like adventure. I like something, whatever, crazy. So I'm like, this is fun. So I got to the plane that day, and I thought, this is the most fun I've had with, in years. So
How do you like the Vision Jet? Like for someone who was not a pilot, getting exposed to that beautiful cabin inside.
oh,
and
what a treat!
Sexy design, and it was neat, right?
It was really neat, and especially that second row, you have such incredible room. So I've been up in the Vision Jet many times since that first day, and one day I was up there with a friend of mine who's quite large, and he has a caravan of his own. He was in that second row seat, and he said he could not believe how much room he had. He said, "My caravan is small," and the view, like one of the beauties of the Vision Jet is you just have this incredible view. Like it makes flying amazing. You get to
From the
look at
passenger
it.
seat or from the front?
Both.
Yeah, agreed.
In fact, I might say the passenger seat is better, but
The windows are so large.
so large, and it's
And Cirrus builds the cabin first.
yeah, and then glues
their
wings
ethos.
on it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's their secret sauce.
and I was told that story earlier this year about how and why they designed it. Which I'll leave that for someone else to tell you, but or to your podcast. But
Yeah.
it's really a great way to travel. And the Vision Jet, I love the tail on the Vision Jet. It looks so cool, and I love the single engine. And I
Why do you love a single engine?
well, it's super fuel economical. It looks great. It sounds, it's quiet. And the parachute gives you that safety factor. So you really, the two engine kind of
And
takes
a
away the
safe
two
return.
engine thing, right?
And the safe return.
And the safe return is amazing. I've watched that video so many times.
I actually am guilty of that too. I've watched it several times.
It
was
is
really very well done by Cirrus.
Fantastic.
Bravo on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just such
It's
a
an
great job.
amazing technology. It's really an autonomous vehicle.
Yeah, I think it's an amazing moment in aviation.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't think they get enough credit for it.
No, and
And it's interesting, as an airline pilot too, I'm type rated in it. And when you go to recurrent training and you go back again into doing the abnormal procedures in the simulator and you do like a rapid decompression and the airplane does it for you, it just doesn't seem right. Because I'm used to taking care of all that in an airline simulator, and this airplane's doing it for me.
yeah.
Rapid depressurization.
Do they let you use safe return
Yeah.
in real life?
No, in the simulator.
In a sim. Okay.
Yeah. And then you knock it off at some point.
Yeah.
But Cirrus has their second simulator from CAE, and I think it's a little bit more advanced than the first one. They're level D simulators, which is like airline type simulators. They're amazing. And I think the new one can do more. And in my last recurrent training, we actually did the rapid depressurization done by the airplane, and I was just awed by it. I actually took some photos of the screens turn into flying for dummies for the passengers to say, okay, this is where I'm going, this is how much time it's going to take, and so forth. But it never gets old for me.
And those sea flight sims are really cool in Knoxville, because I was watching one, it just sort of dumped, and someone said, "Oh, they just pulled the caps," and they're out of Montreal.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was mountain biking with a guy in Whistler, and he worked for CAE.
Oh, wow.
He actually built those things. Yeah.
Very interesting. He's an engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So let's get back to your flying. So that experience, how did that parlay into you wanting to learn to fly?
Oh, so that was really fun, and then
You ran into Carol LaBeouf somehow. Is that how
Yeah.
it got going?
well, I got involved in some other
Carol's
stuff.
at fault.
And partially I was at the NBAA,
NBAA, yeah.
I think it is in
In
Vegas. And I was standing next to Carol, and we're involved in some Vision Jet stuff, and I said, I should probably learn how to fly one of these
Well, let's
things.
qualify that. So you own a Vision Jet.
Yeah, so as part of a charter company,
Yeah.
I own a Vision Jet.
Exactly. Okay.
I was standing next to Carol.
Right.
Said I probably should learn how to fly one of these things. I said, "Can you?"
Vision Jets or SRs?
I'll start with an SR, because
Okay.
it kind of really, I think the idea is it's a beautiful progression from this aircraft
It
to the
is.
second aircraft.
Especially
Very-
now with the G7,
Yeah.
with Garmin 3000.
The G7 would be
Mm-hmm.
even better. And so I think I already knew that you should do an SR first, get maybe 500 hours, and then think about transitioning to the Vision Jet. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it might have been one of the fastest sale transactions in history. Because I said, "Hey, Carol, can you just tell me what I need and let's do it?" He's like, "Okay."
So you bought the airplane before
In about
day one of training.
a minute and a half with Carol,
Uh-huh.
or less, like 30 seconds.
How'd he do that? Is he a wizard at
Well, he just said, "Okay,
selling
you
something?
should have this."
Uh-huh.
So, Fiki, I didn't know anything. So
Yeah.
I said, "I'm going to be flying Pacific Northwest." So he said, "Okay, turbo, Fiki," and I think he threw in a four-blade prop for fun.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little quieter and slightly faster.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. He sent me a message later. He said, "I forgot to get a deposit." So I just sent him a picture of my credit card.
Uh-huh.
And, months later, they're like, "Oh, now we need a real deposit."
Mm-hmm.
And
And it was going to be a 2-year wait.
I think it was, just under
18
a 2-year
months
wait.
or-
Yeah.
okay,
So then I
so-
thought, I better figure out how to fly it. And then I started
Okay.
some flight training.
How long did you wait until you started training?
Too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, this goes back to, I know myself well enough that if I didn't buy the plane first, I probably would have never finished my flight training.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a way
interesting.
to force yourself into it, right?
Interesting, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a crazy way to do it, but
Okay.
it's effective.
Okay, so where'd you start your training?
I started out in California. I started in a little Piper, 1955 Piper, flaps.
Piper what?
I don't even know what it was
Like
called.
tailwheel?
No. No, it wasn't. It was a tricycle.
Okay.
And
Piper Cub?
I think so.
Okay.
The flaps were a
1955
like a
is going
brake
way back.
pedal. I think it was 55. Or something.
Okay.
It was an
You
old
got
plane.
pictures?
Yeah, somewhere.
Okay, you got to show me.
And so that was fun. It was very slow,
We'll have to show the audience.
but started getting the first concept of what flying's about, and
It's a
different.
good start.
Yeah, it was fun, and
Stick and rudder.
we landed in some farmer's field one day.
How many hours did you do in that?
I think I did 19 hours.
That's a lot.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe it was 9 or 19.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay.
Wasn't a ton.
That explains, some of that to me. Your initial skills that I saw was you had some good stick and rudder skills. Maybe it came from that origin.
Yeah, maybe it was.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun, and then I knew the SR was coming, so I thought, okay, I should do SR stuff, and I was really looking forward to doing this with my buddy in Arizona. So we started flying together. So one of us would fly in the morning, and one's in the back, and we switch seats, and we
Is this at a Cirrus authorized
at the
center?
Cirrus. Yeah, that
Which
was
one?
really great down in
Arizona?
Arizona and Scottsdale.
Okay. Okay.
And I thought it'd be quiet in
Yeah.
Arizona, and it turns out to be one of the busiest airports
super
ever.
busy.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got how much flying did you do there?
Maybe 20, 50 hours, something like that. And then
Okay.
started moving up here.
Yeah, and then you came to us. Okay, great. And then we worked on your private license, and you earned that. And
Yeah. And that's a challenge, at least for me.
Yeah.
It's a huge challenge, a huge accomplishment.
mm-hmm.
And, not running companies currently
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. It was like, what a great thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Super fun.
That's awesome. I think it would be really beneficial. A need that I see that could be met would be if we trained the private and the instrument at the same time, or congruently, or some in one course, so that when you finished your training, you had both. And you're
Yeah.
done. Because it's really tough to finish the private license and then muster up the courage and time to study for the instrument written and then do that. If you could walk away, if you could do the training in one bite-sized course, and then you have them both in your
Yeah,
set,
it's
especially in
definitely
the
a
Cirrus.
huge commitment. You'd have to, because there's a lot, even in studying for the instrument for the FAA test, I actually learned a lot going through all of it. I did all 1,137 questions, at least a couple laps on those.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very nuanced. Sometimes I want to murder the FAA for the questions.
Uh-huh.
And they're so nuanced. But if you can start to understand that nuance, you actually really understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk about Cirrus, the company. What do you think about Cirrus? Small company, 2,000 employees. They've really revolutionized the industry, haven't they?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I've met the founders. I met Dale, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been out there. I've spent time at headquarters. I've been up in Minnesota, um, and it's fun to we did a factory walk.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the fuselage
At Duluth.
Duluth,
Okay.
yeah, the fuselage looks like those model airplanes that we used to glue together,
Yeah.
the two parts. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
let's have some glue. Let's
Yeah.
make some airplanes here. Um, and so, it's a company that is growing, right? So how do they do more production, or not, or
Mm-hmm.
balance that with what's the economy
Mm-hmm.
going to do, things like that. And it's great. Like, I think that I have this funny thing that I say. Uh, the opening line of Tolstoy and a Karenina is, all happy families are alike, or happy in the
Mm.
same way, and all unhappy families are unhappy in different ways.
Mm.
And I liken this to business. Like, when you look at a business that is struggling or broken, there's a million ways for it to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They can have embezzlement, they can have bad product management, whatever. There's all these different things that can go wrong. But if you look at companies that are being successful, they're doing probably these 5 or 10 things right. They have SMART goals, they have core values, they have this, they have that, and they check those boxes. And Cirrus is doing that.
Mm.
So they're doing, as I look at different companies and all the ones that are successful in doing things right, Cirrus is checking all those boxes. They've got their brand right, they've got the product right. It's never perfect. I don't know how it was years ago. So I've only seen the sort of the current version of Cirrus, which is really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think they're dominating the industry in light aircraft sales?
Oh, I think the parachute is massive.
Mm-hmm.
I think the quality of the aircraft, the Garmin system,
Mm-hmm.
they're making flying accessible
Mm-hmm.
to more people,
Approachable.
approachable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And people can suddenly envision themselves, hey, I could fly one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I could change my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I can fly from point A to point B
Mm-hmm.
that might take me 8 hours in a commercial aircraft by the time I drive to the airport and clear whatever and get there and get my rental car and drive for another hour.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that same trip in 2 hours
Mm-hmm.
from my back door.
Mm-hmm. And they appeal to the safety-minded pilot and passenger, and Cirrus takes action behind the marketing. There's so many things about the airplane that's so safe, from the roll cage to the 26G seats to the vertical integration of a flight management system with Garmin, synthetic vision, traffic awareness, not just ADS-B, but traffic awareness system autonomous from ADS-B.
Oh, I've had that traffic aware
Yeah.
system go off.
Which is absolutely incredible. Terrain awareness, digital autopilot. It's just amazing. And then 2 of everything. You got 1 engine and 1 parachute, but everything else there's 2 of.
There's 2 of.
From magnetometers to batteries to alternators to you name it. It's just 2 electrical systems. It's just incredible. And the real brilliance to me is what we talked about earlier, is they started with the cabin and built an airplane around the cabin, and it's just so inviting. And part of this makes me wonder if this is the attraction for females. If I
Oh,
go
they'll tell you
females for a
that.
minute,
Yep.
I've never met a female that didn't love a Cirrus, and I don't know what it is.
Well, if I have
it can't just be the parachute.
No, and if I have the story right, they designed this so that, wives, girlfriends, whatever, or the non-pilot, whoever's not flying, can know where they're going and when they're going to get there
How?
from the screens.
Yeah.
And how much fuel do we have, and all that sort of stuff that gives you really an amazing peace of mind.
Yeah.
So, and then I believe they designed it. Hey, what are the seats like? How's this feel comfort-wise? Now we're going to build a cabin around that, and now we're going to put wings on that, and sort of building it from a different direction of, oh, we've got an airplane, let's glue some seats in it.
And they killed it with the Vision Jet because they just took that process and they did it the same way.
It's wonderful.
It made it even better. I like the real large windows. It's not claustrophobic because of the large windows.
I feel safer in a Vision Jet than I do in a commercial aircraft.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah, much safer, and it's smoother. And I've been in some really not great air in the Vision Jet, and those little things on the tail that auto correct it, and it makes it really smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm MD-11 there.
Yeah.
Something leaked out of my head from the MD-11. Yeah, and the Vision Jet has one large cabin, so the pilot's part of the passenger experience. You're not
Yes.
separated, and I think that's a really valuable thing. I think that's why we can really call it a personal jet. It's more personal,
Yeah.
yeah, in that way.
And also, if passengers want to sit up front, with
Yeah,
the pilot, because
yeah,
it's a single pilot aircraft,
yeah,
they can sit up front, they can get
yeah,
involved, they
yeah,
can help out.
yeah.
I remember I flew a lot um, in the second seat, and I started, I was still learning, and I started,
Uh-huh.
I was changing the altitudes, I was listening
Yeah.
to radio, I was doing little
Hmm.
tasks in the aircraft,
Hmm.
so it was super fun.
And then in Arizona, you flew the 22 and the 20,
Yeah,
or mostly
mostly
22.
22 and a turbo.
Oh, so 22 and turbo, not a 20.
I think we did 1 or 2 days
Okay,
of
so
the
mostly
20,
22 and
22s.
22T,
Yeah.
and then your own personal T, because when you came to us, you brought the
Yeah, I brought it
22T.
down to Arizona. I left it there.
So is it crazy to learn to fly at a 22T versus something that's not doesn't have so much performance?
I think it just things come faster. The
Hmm.
plane's faster, it's stronger, it takes off faster.
Hmm. But
It
some people might be of the opinion that, hey, this is too much airplane to learn on.
well, that's what they say. So I don't know any better.
But it
So
worked for you.
it worked great.
Yeah.
It was super.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was
I can say that I've had many clients that have learned on the turbo, and it's just fine. It's just the turbo is different than other aircraft, and you just have to learn that. But that's just all you know. And in some
well,
ways,
it's the same as the 22, just a different engine, right?
yeah. But compared to like the 20,
Okay. Yeah.
which just doesn't have the same performance. But it doesn't. I don't think there's any wrong or right reason to pick either airplane. But there's a lot of naysayers that will say, "Hey, you can't train a turbos too much. You're doing something dangerous." But I disagree
No, I think it's fine.
100%. Yeah, I think that it's just what you know, and in some cases, you're further along in the game because you don't need to transition to a turbo. You learned on a turbo. What's
Yeah.
the next thing? Vision jet and
When I was in that
whatever.
Piper, I had a few people say, "Why are you in the Piper? You should be learning in the plane you're going to fly."
Yeah, that was good. Good advice.
Yeah.
But also that was good for you. It was good stick and rudder skills that you learned.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
as I said, one of the things I want to do now is go fly a tail wheel
Hmm.
and really improve those stick and rudder skills, which will translate
Yeah,
back to the SR
yeah,
and just make you a better pilot.
yeah. So I don't think there's any right or wrong way to go about it. You could start in a Cirrus and then go to a tail wheel or whatever later, or vice versa. I
Yeah.
don't think there's any right or wrong answer. So you've already put this airplane into service. I think that you went to the Bahamas a day or two or three after getting the license,
Yeah, yeah, directly.
and also you
I went to Cincinnati first.
hijacked Canyon, our chief pilot. We were supposed to go to Knoxville and pick up a new aircraft for our school, and Canyon and Rusty showed up at the airport. He said, "No, we have different plans. We're going to go to Knoxville, but we're going to go to Indianapolis first."
We took a detour
You took a detour.
just for dinner. We had dinner.
Yeah, but we were supposed to be in Knoxville that night, and you did get that.
We did
that
get
night,
there.
but we had delivery at 8 in the morning the next day,
Yeah,
and y'all rolled in like 3 in the morning or something in Knoxville.
might have been one.
How did all that happen?
So a really good friend of mine was doing a benefit ride across the United States for ALS. They're a bunch of rugby players,
Mm.
and they're raising money for ALS, and they happened to be almost on our flight path. And so I was like, "Hey guys, you want to go for dinner?" So
Mhm.
we veered. I think it was Indianapolis, or I don't know where we went, Indianapolis or something.
Yeah, it was Indy.
So we, right, because we flew over the racetrack,
Mhm.
and we dropped down, grabbed an Uber, 10 minutes to dinner, met up with all the guys, and and Canyon, as you know, is a bike racer,
Mhm.
so they were kind of thrilled to meet this bike racer
Yeah.
guy. And I don't know if Canyon knew, but a couple of those rugby players were like literally legends.
Really?
Like one of them was a CBE in the UK, which is, I don't think you're quite knighted, but it's quite a high honor. I mean, there were some rugby legends in that room, so it was kind of cool to
That's
watch.
amazing.
I just sort of stood back and watched them.
Yeah,
And then we finished dinner, we jumped in the plane and
Yeah.
flew over to Knoxville.
that's so incredible. And then Ken got no sleep, nor did Rusty.
I don't think any of us did. Yeah.
And then you hijacked Canyon after Oshkosh last summer, and you both flew to Whistler. So your
Yeah.
house in Whistler. And how long a flight was that from
Well,
Wisconsin to Whistler
we flew. That was really neat because,
total?
one of the beauties of the SR versus the Vision Jet is you're flying lower generally. And
It's neat, isn't it?
it's neat. And you get to
Uh-huh.
look at the topography of the entire country.
Agreed.
And I remember as we approached Montana, it went from flat to these little kind of hills, and then it moved right into the Rockies. And it was
It's beautiful, isn't it?
just beautiful. I've seen so many beautiful things.
That's some of my favorite flying in Alaska when we would fly from Louisville to Anchorage is crossing all those giant mountains that are in the 20s. They
Incredible.
come up at you because normally you're just looking at whatever, you can't really see much.
Yeah, they came
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. And
How long, what was your total block time? Do you remember? 8 or 10 hours or something like that?
well, we went again, this is the beauty of it. So
Yeah.
one of my other colleagues from the software company lives in Whitefish, Montana, and we were flying over, and I said, "Hey,"
We can just stop here.
so we flew in.
Uh-huh.
We got a tour of town.
Uh-huh.
I think we had lunch or something. I can't
Dinner?
remember if it was
Didn't you
lunch
spend
or
the night
dinner. It
there?
was dinner. No, we didn't stay there.
Okay.
So we dropped in there, hung out for a few hours,
Mm-hmm.
jumped back in the plane,
Mm-hmm.
and went to Portland, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we overnighted with a friend of mine there, and the next morning we flew from Portland up to Whistler,
Yeah.
and that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had some turbulent winds, I think.
Yeah,
Didn't you?
a little bit. It wasn't
Mm,
too bad.
mhm.
And then,
Okay.
when you get to Whistler, you can go up, fly up a canyon, or you can
Mhm.
come in over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And we came in over the top and approached
Mm-hmm.
approached the runway in a town called Pemberton.
Mm-hmm.
We've
Mhm.
started because I had been up there and said, okay, let's follow this river.
Mm-hmm.
We came around the river and we're just it lined us up on the runway. It was really neat. And then
Do you take some photos?
yeah, I have photos. And then that summer, I flew a number of times from Bellingham, Washington, up to Pemberton. I did that circuit 5 or 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to really understand it and
Mhm.
understand mountain flying and staying on one side of the canyon
Mhm.
versus the other,
Mhm.
depending on your direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then I talked to the guys at Harbor Air that fly into Green Lake and Whistler all summer with the float planes. And I said, how do you guys do it? And they're like, oh, we really rely on the webcams, and here are all the webcams to look at up and down the thing.
Interesting.
And then we rely on the radios. You do a lot of position reporting up and down. I think there's 4 frequencies, and there's another airport in between. And so one of my early flights, I was solo going up to Pemberton. It was the evening. There was rain, a light rain, which I could see on the radar, so I could just move around the rain, which is really cool. I mean, the technology in the plane is amazing.
Right.
And then at the same time, there had been fires. So there were water bombers in the air, and there were helicopters.
Oh my.
And the light was dropping, and there was smoke. So all of this was going on at the same time, and I was solo.
Challenges.
Yeah,
Like
it's
we talked
really
about
challenging,
before.
right?
Uh-huh.
I was just like kind of nervous because as you get up to the end there's sort of the mountains come together. And there's sort of a notch that you want to get through, and then it opens up, and there's sort of a big wide open area, and you're like, oh, okay, how do I
Yeah.
make this kind of approach? Because you have to curl around for the runway. So that was really exciting because I was on the radio with the fire guys. And I was asking the helicopter guys, like, what altitude are you guys at so I can avoid you? And he was like, we're at every altitude. Stay awake.
Interesting.
So that was challenging. And then they were reporting where they were, and I could see the helicopters dropping water, and I was flying around the fires and stuff. So, and it actually, the smoke and the sun was going down. It actually made the light really quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And so it was a beautiful flight, but I was nervous, to be sure.
Yeah.
It was a
Wow. Okay, so
challenging flight.
I wanted to ask you, how many total hours do you have now, roughly?
I think I'm around 350. I
Okay.
wanna say.
And so give us your scariest moment flying so far since your license
Right.
or since solo.
Since solo. So probably the scariest moment was coming back into California to my local airport, and clouds
Set
started.
us up for the trip. So what was this trip?
It was Texas to
You were returning home from
returning
training
home
with us.
to San Francisco, and
Mhm.
I had overnighted in Arizona. No, we were doing straight shot.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trying to leave Texas early in the morning. We got a little bit delayed. We had some frost on the wings. We had to get off.
Mm-hmm.
So we got in the air we had a fuel stop, or one or two fuel stops, and then we were getting into the San Francisco Bay Area in the evening. So there were a couple things along the way that sucked up a bit of time. One of the fuel stops and things like that. And so we're coming in. So the weather was set to be fine going in, but I knew there was weather coming in, and it came in quicker than we expected. So as we got in, we could see the ground. We started following the edge of the bay around to my local airport, which is very small runway, almost no lights. We got around there. It was really cloudy, so it was like, okay, we're going to call this and go to Napa. I'll leave the plane there. I'll Uber home. It's 40 minutes from my house. And in that transition time of turning around and going, and it's not very far, it's maybe 9 miles or something, shooting over to Napa, the clouds came in and we got into full IMC, and it got scary. So
Now you had Nate with you, who was instrument rated,
yes,
but you felt uneasy because
yeah, very
you don't have your
unusual.
instrument
I
rating
was
yet.
flying.
So it's new for you, new experience, being in
Very
the weather.
new and very not visible. So I requested a instrument landing because spent the whole week doing instruments, so I knew how to do it. And they gave it to us, and we came in on instruments. We got to the minimums, and there was no runway.
Couldn't see anything.
Couldn't see anything. This was real life go mist. So we went mist, and then we're back on radar guys, and they were saying, go 4,000 mist. I was full throttle up to 4,000. I'm like watching the gas gauge go.
Yeah, what was your fuel state at this time?
I think we're around there. We were on 13 gallons.
Oh my.
And then, and I was started getting nervous because we're burning fuel, climbing at 30, 40 gallons an hour. And so then I requested another shot at that runway, and they offered us the other end of the runway, which I turned down initially. And then I said, no, we're getting low on fuel. We'll take that other end of the runway. We're reporting
Like a
everything.
180.
Yeah. So I didn't have to do the 180.
Winds were calm.
I could just go in. Yeah, it wasn't a wind issue. It was a visual issue. And, they offered, do you want to declare an emergency? So I did.
Why?
Because I was down to 11 gallons, I think, at that point. I was nervous because they were having us climb like crazy, and our fuel could go.
Weren't you in mountainous terrain as well?
There are some mountains. There's, I said, hey, do you need us to send us so high because we're low on fuel? And they're like, yeah, I have to, so you're not going to hit anything.
Yeah.
And there are, the mountain near my home is, I think it's 2,800 feet, things like that. So 4,000 was plenty of room, especially where we were, because it's quite flat there. So anyway, that's the mist altitude, or the MSA probably, or whatever. So we did that. And then then I said, hey, we'll take the other end that you offered earlier. And I think we came in on an RNAV. We came out of the clouds, and it was beautiful. The whole runway was there.
You saw it.
Yeah. It was
Why? Was it just the weather was different on that part of the field, or
I think it
your
was the other
minimums
end
were
of the
lower?
runway.
Or?
We're another mile down in the other direction. It's a super long runway, and it was close to the water, and the runway was right there. And suddenly we went from, being pretty nervous, potential disaster, to this beautiful view of the runway, and it was arguably one of the best landings ever. So,
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
just from being excited to be on the ground, but it was
Yeah.
just a gentle landing, and it was
Yeah.
like, okay, great. So we left the plane there, and that weather kept coming in. I could not retrieve it for 3 days.
Amazing.
Socked in.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are the lessons learned on this flight?
Really pay attention to your weather, especially in the air. I think I was legal on fuel, but I think be over legal on fuel.
Well, you were basically VFR into IMC is
Yeah.
what happened.
Maybe I should have just turned around and gone backwards.
Were you more confident because you had Nate with you that was IFR rated? Would you have done that solo, or would you made a different decision? Because there are VFR to IMC accidents.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is kind of you, but you did have Nate with you. So was your guard down?
Yeah, not so much we were both, hey, should we do this?
He's not proficient in the Cirrus. That's the only downside.
He's not proficient in the Cirrus. I was
Yeah.
pretty good on the controls, but I wasn't, ready for that. So I probably might have called it a bit earlier. And I think if I saw that weather, because the weather is unbelievably accurate. It's scary accurate.
Short range it is.
Short range. So I think if I saw it coming in earlier, I could have landed another airport in, Concord or Livermore or something like that.
Would that have been east
It would have
or
been east
south?
and south.
Okay.
So that I knew that weather was clear, so I could have said, okay, that's not looking so good.
Mm-hmm.
But we still had ground contact. We could see quite clearly. So it
It was
really kind of
deteriorating though as you were
yeah.
trying to make the landing. Isn't that interesting? What time of day was it? Was it coming into
Then you're
dusk?
adding end of day, right? So now you
Yeah.
had dusk on
Temperature, dew
top of
point are
it.
coming together. And,
Temperature's coming down.
yeah.
The lights coming down.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely a
Visibility.
recipe for a
Yeah.
disaster.
Okay. So what would you change doing it again?
I think I would have, given the time of day and the weather,
Mm-hmm.
probably would have landed maybe at Livermore and called it good there.
But when did you know the weather was coming down? Oh, so you mean when you got into it, you've been like, okay, let's just turn around and get out of here.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
I would have gotten out earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you're going to get your instrument rating in a week or soon, Tuesday. When you have that rating and you've got what the aircraft can do, would you carry on and just
Yeah, I probably would have
shoot an
gone.
LPV or something?
I would have gone to Napa and shot an LPV.
Yeah. What was the first approach you shot there?
RNF.
But to what mins? Was it an LPV?
No, it was like I want to say
Like an
600 or
LNAV
something, yeah.
mins or something like that? Okay.
Yeah. And it was kind of a shame because I was at that level and 20 seconds later I saw the threshold of the runway, but we're over it.
Mm-hmm.
If I probably could have dropped down and landed. I knew the runway was super long there, but I thought, oh, let's follow the rules and take another lap.
So maybe you weren't as aware as you could have been on the weather situation as you left, New Mexico or Arizona?
Yeah, as we were moving north up California.
So, at Vector Approach, there's 3 skill sets that we try to administer to our clients one by one. The first one is to make you a master of the air. It's your technical proficiency in the airplane, the ability to fly it, and understand how to fly it safely, not stall the airplane, not lose control of it, how to coordinate for a crosswind, understanding yawing tendencies at low energy and high AOA, all this kinds of stuff. We can sleep at night because we know you're never going to have a problem in the airplane with flying it. The second thing we teach is that you become a master of procedure. And that's really where you're at now, the instrument rating. And then the last thing we want to do is make you a master of decision making. That one's the hard one because you're not employed with an airline or a corporation where we can say, you will do this and this and this, or we have this process for you. So, but I've thought about having a service at Vector Approach, sort of like the airlines have, a dispatch service. And I've actually trademarked the name of the idea, SafeWatch. And originally I was thinking of using aircraft with SATCOM. So our customers have SATCOM. We can talk to you while you're en route as you encounter challenges like you did in that flight, or maybe we see something you don't see yet. But that's a little bit problematic because not everyone has SATCOM on board. But recently, Starlink, just this last week, has announced a new program for light aircraft. So you can install this Starlink for about $500, and then the service is $65 a month, I think. We'll have to fact check this. For high-speed internet, like you can FaceTime on it. Wouldn't that be amazing? We already have customers now that have the Starlink installed inside the aircraft.
Yeah, I've met a few guys that have it.
Yeah, which is legal. And then had you had Starlink, first of all, you're on our leaderboard. We know you're flying today. You know what your route is. We probably briefed you in advance. This is a service you have.
Right. I probably would have got a phone call from you guys like, hey, you're bad weather
Well,
ahead.
I mean, yeah, we would have seen the weather if we were tracking and called you up and said, hey, you might consider this, consider that. You're still the decision maker, but we're giving you more information,
Right.
just making you aware. And that's what dispatch does in the airline. It's super useful. So
Right. And if you're flying somewhere that you don't know, you might say, hey,
yeah,
you've got Livermore here, you've got this one here.
right.
Here are your options.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about that?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Actually, it might be a service you could offer to a lot of pilots.
I've talked to people about it and they feel like they don't need it.
Yeah.
Is the first objection you get.
Yes.
but you don't need it till you need it.
Right.
And so you might consider, or we might consider, you pay as you go, maybe like chips. Like I'm going to buy 6 credits, and then if I think I have a flight that's going to be challenging, I'll use a credit here. But the problem is you don't know when you need the credits.
Right. Unless you treat it like, you call
Hmm.
it WX brief and you have safe watch
Yeah,
on this flight. I'm flying from here to there,
yeah,
and not only do I get the brief, I get the
yeah,
watch.
yeah. All right. So you gave us the scariest flight. What's been your best flight so far? I know you've gone to the Bahamas. Would that be it, or something else?
Um,
You went to the Bahamas the day after you got your license,
well, I
right?
went to Cincinnati
Okay.
for a couple of days, and then I flew Cincinnati down to Florida, and I picked up another pilot, a friend of mine who
Mm,
knew how to get in the Bahamas, which was really fun. That might so I was a little bit late getting down to Florida, so I ended up overnighting there, and we left really early the next day, and we flew at 17,000 feet and saw the most beautiful sunrise ever.
wow. Do you take a picture?
And I have a beautiful picture of it.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we dropped into the Bahamas, and my son and his mother were at sort of this dive, old school
Mm,
1960s dive place. It's really
mm.
fantastic. And so they have a nice little bay and dock and
Mm.
everything. So of course we buzzed
Oh,
at 7 o'clock in the morning with a
uh,
nice loop overhead.
nice.
Um, and uh, and then landed at the airport, which is 10 minutes away. We're there for, an 8 o'clock breakfast, and by 9:15, I was 143 feet below the surface,
That's
diving
incredible.
through caverns
Yeah.
there. So I went from 17,000 to minus 143 in 2 hours or less.
Isn't that incredible?
And that was really
Yeah.
cool. And also flying into the Bahamas is
Yeah.
cool. And,
Yeah.
clearing their customs, which is
Yeah.
like, a
Yeah.
little outhouse on the runway.
Yeah. What month did you get your private license?
June, I think.
June. And it's now, well, we're approaching June. So it's been
Almost a year.
8 or 9 months. Yeah. So how would you describe, is this the Cirrus Life, Ridge Sampson?
It is the Cirrus Life.
Uh-huh.
I've been shooting up and down the California coast.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I went over to Vegas. We
Mm-hmm.
went to another aviation show last minute. It's like, oh, okay, let's go to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
2 hours later, we're landing in Vegas, and it's so much better. I've done a million trade shows in Vegas, and
Mm-hmm.
you land at that big airport. It takes forever to find a taxi. There's a million people smoking, and
Mm-hmm.
you're already feeling awful and then you have a 20-30 minute drive to your hotel. We flew into Henderson. While we were taxiing, we set up the Uber. So we literally parked the plane, walked into an Uber. We're at our hotel in 20 minutes.
It's amazing.
It was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Spent, I don't know, a night or two there. Went to the Sphere, had some great dinners, hung around at the show, bumped into some of the Cirrus guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they were showing all these brand new planes. There's like, Bombardier. We saw the founders of Bombardier speak, which was
Mm.
fantastic. And that was, if anyone can see that video, it was a lesson on leadership. It
Really?
wasn't a lesson, to my mind.
Oh.
Like I watched it with that hat on,
Uh-huh.
and they were great. And I love the way they lead that company, and that's why they have the innovation they have.
Interesting.
So if you can see that,
Uh-huh.
and so then we're out looking at the planes and kind of like, well, all right, let's go back to California.
Mm-hmm.
Golf cart to the plane,
Mm-hmm.
fired up, and
Mm-hmm.
we're back at the in my hangar in 2 hours. Another 15 minutes to my house. I mean,
It's
it's
so great.
incredible.
It's so
Yeah.
great.
For me to fly to Vegas, I have to
Mm-hmm.
drive an
Yeah.
hour, hang around an airport an hour,
Right.
do an hour flight, get out of that awful airport in
Mm-hmm.
Vegas. So
Mm-hmm.
what is that? 4 hours?
Yeah. It's just amazing.
Probably if you're lucky.
All right. So what's next for Ridge Sampson? Instrument rating on Tuesday.
Yeah, so I
What's
think
next
the
on the
instrument
agenda?
rating is a new level of freedom. So right now,
Mm-hmm.
your VFR, you're living at the mercy of clouds,
Mm-hmm.
and
And the airplane's so capable.
and the airplane,
That's why I'm thinking it'd be so great if we can get the private instrument in one go.
yeah, so capable.
Some way to create a program like that.
If I had a nickel for everyone that told me, if you have this aircraft and you don't have IFR, you're
Yeah.
stupid.
Right.
So it's a new level of freedom. So there's certain times of the year in San Francisco we just have this layer of stratus clouds at 2,000-3,000 feet, and you bust through them, and you've got sunshine.
Yeah.
So, if you want to go somewhere, all you need to do is get above those clouds. But I can't fly above those. I
Yeah.
can't fly them
Not until
through them yet.
on Tuesday. We
Yeah,
got
hopefully.
it. Yeah. And so you have the instrument rating. What's next?
I'm gone.
Yes. But what's next?
Oh, which rating is next?
Well, airplane.
So, okay.
I think you'll take a pause on training. Maybe you'll do
Well,
commercial
full
one day,
transparency.
or multi-engine. But
Here's my crazy thinking. First, I'm gone. Over the years, I've accumulated a lot of friends across the entire country. So I'm going to be their worst nightmare. I'm going to couch surfing across the country. And it's great. You can drop in and, hey, how's it going? And then disappear off somewhere else. And I have a lot of family in Quebec that I want to get out and visit with. So that'll be great. But as far as airplanes, I think my very next adventure is I want to go fly Super Cubs
really,
and do tailwheel. So I think I'd like to
like Carbon Cub.
Carbon Cubs. So they have a 3-day and a 5-day course. I'd like to go
Who's they?
tack arrow,
Mm-hmm.
and it's here at Gillespie.
Oh, nice.
And so I've been in
With
their
Carbon
hangar a few
Cubs?
times. Yeah.
Okay.
And so get a tailwheel endorsement, really hone those skills, stick and rudder
Can
skills.
I do that with you?
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay.
That'd be so much fun.
All right.
And then,
I don't have a tail endorsement, so.
I think it'd be a blast.
Yeah.
And then you start landing on, they said they have 40 farms that they're allowed to land on.
Huh.
So you can go in the country, whatever. They do it up in Alaska as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, do that and then move into, I thought I might just get my commercial just because it's not a big step,
It's not.
just for insurance, to lower my insurance rate.
And a fun license to get.
And the tolerances are less and it makes you a better pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And then move into the Vision Jet with you guys and get primed to go and pass I don't know if it's a type rating or the
Yeah,
Vision Jet
type
rating.
rating. Yeah. So what we provide is the preparedness training for the type rating because it's the ATP standards. We just take some of the anxiety out.
So is ATP like a professional pilot?
Airline transport license. Yeah.
Wow, like
I
you're-
mean, if you want to get hired by an airline, you have to have the ATP.
Wait, I'm going to have to do my medical every 6 months?
No, you don't need the ATP. It's just that the testing for the type rating is to ATP standards. So its tolerances are the highest they can be. So we prepare you for that. So there's less anxiety.
Right.
So you're assured you're going to do well. And I've probably done about 6 clients that way in the last couple of years. And we've done it. We've trained in the actual airplane to do that. And now we partner with Real Sim Gear, the simulator company, to provide training with the simulator and an aircraft to get you ready. So you can be one of our first clients. Yeah. So we have the simulator now. We're working on it and building that curriculum, and super excited about adding that because it'll bring a lot of efficiency, reduce cost, better training. Ground Speed Zero is always great to work on procedures and certain technical things.
Yeah. And I think, obviously as you know or practice, it's one thing to be current. It's another thing to be proficient.
Yeah, that's right.
And
These skills are perishable quickly.
Yeah, they are. And I think for any pilot, you just have to be in the air regularly. It's
Exactly.
important.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if this would happen, but maybe a wild hair might have the transportation up to Whistler with the Vision Jet or the SR is a great workhorse, and maybe a Carbon Cup out there.
Yeah.
You can also put floats on them.
Yes.
So I thought I might want to get my float plane license.
That's amazing.
And there's so many lakes, and there's Victoria Island, and you'd be all over the place up there. So that's fun. So if you're constantly keeping your skills sharp,
Yeah, definitely. And I love it. And you have the G7 turbo coming.
it's on the way.
Yeah. Colors?
Same as the.
Identical?
I think I'm gonna go with the same paint job.
Why? It's kind of boring.
I like it.
I do like it too, but
I like the black and silver.
yeah.
I'm gonna look at the colors, see what they have, because there's one set of colors that's pretty wild. I kind of like it. So
Wow.
we'll see what
Very
happens.
great. So we have 2 G7 turbos with our clients, and I feel like they're 10 knots faster. I emailed Josh Hoskins. These airplanes are faster.
Right.
Why is that? He says, "Oh, it's you're comparing pre 2022 where they changed the wing design, with the leading edge is less drag. and the different wheel pans, and it's probably that. And then he said, well, maybe it's magneto timing, but I'll tell you what, that airplane's 10 knots faster
Well, if you can feel
than
it, I bet it
every
is.
other G6 I've flown. It's amazing. And so I'm assuming Josh is right. Maybe we just got a couple airplanes with amazing magneto timing, but I'm here to tell you that airplane's smoking fast.
Yeah, and
It's
I mean,
awesome.
10 knots, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
Well, Ridge, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for dropping into Texas by accident or fortune or whatever. So pleased that you're my buddy, and so pleased that you're part of the Vector Approach team. And thanks for all your mentorship for myself too, and our team here at Vector Approach for how we run the business. And we rely on you for a lot of different things that we really appreciate. So thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, and no, thank you. I love it. I've learned so much.
Yeah.
Every time we're in the air, I learn something new.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't know, maybe TAC Aero is just an excuse for me to get back here and hang out.
That's right. All right, it's a wrap.
All right. Cool. Thanks.
Love it.